Dear viewer, I welcome you to my second channel, which will be dedicated to short stories that will intersperse the longer ones on my main channel. If it's your first time here, the link to my main channel is in the description. Be sure to subscribe to the main and second channel so you don't miss new stories. And we're just getting started. And if you're an old-timer, thanks for still being around me. I really appreciate it. In each video, I'll also cover a little bit of the story itself from a psychology perspective and ask and chat with you in the comments about each of the stories. And now enjoy watching my dear viewer. Her lovely legs. The last few weeks of my life have turned out to be much more exciting than what I was promised in the last couple months of college. Studying and volunteering in classrooms is one thing, but I was finally officially a teacher's aide. It would be a lie to say that I wasn't intimidated, especially when I realized that I would be working in the substitute teacher of the year class at Tom Landry High School, led by Mrs. Peggy Hill for 3 years in a row. From the moment I laid eyes on the elderly married woman and her strikingly large feet, I knew I was in for a rough ride. She was my type, and she was also an amazing woman, teacher, mother, and wife. I had come to know and respect Peggy, so I felt a little guilty for lusting after her. It was the first year of her new teaching contract, and I knew I wanted to help her get tenure quickly. I had worked extensively with her in a classroom full of middle school students who were either struggling or not trying to master Spanish at all. It was frustrating, but to be expected when it came to a foreign language. English can be difficult enough even for native speakers. Nevertheless, I think the students generally enjoyed the classes when Mrs. Hill and I were present, making them fun and interesting. Peggy was always so creative in her lessons that I wanted to adopt her teaching style and use it in the future. But the thought of moving on without her became more and more difficult as time went on. The time we spent together before, during, and after school, we will cherish. We got along so well, like best friends. The days flew by as I joked and playfully flirted with my stunning vice principal. Of course, she talked a lot about her family. About her husband, Hank, I knew more than I wanted to know. Apparently, he was a great guy, but didn't deserve this adorable girl. I inquired if he did anything for her in the form of a foot massage, but apparently he lacked that and more. How could a man live with a woman who had such huge feet and keep his hands off them? If it were me, I would rub her feet every day, or even several times a day. I jokingly suggested it to her several times, but she only laughed and never responded. If she only knew what an honor it would be for me to even see what I thought were long, beautiful toes and soft soles. I was so tired of pretending, seeing no point in it. She was missing too much. On Friday, I ventured out for a real meeting. I wish I could say it was spontaneous, but as soon as Peggy told me that her husband and son were going camping for the weekend, before she even got home, a plan started forming in my head. It happened automatically, and I couldn't stop myself. Even though I realized how wrong it was and how weird it would turn out if she rejected me, I literally couldn't resist her anymore. If this was some sort of moral test, I knew I would fail. Selfishly, I hoped Peggy would too. After class, we often had a rest. We had had a good week, no problems with any of the students, and now it was raining outside. The quiet tapping on the large window in the classroom calmed my nerves a little. We chatted casually with each other as we cleaned and prepared the room for Monday. Mrs. Hill had started changing some of the educational posters on the walls. She did this weekly, always coming up with new ones for new sections of the textbook. To some it may have seemed sloppy, but it was actually very thoughtful. Not every teacher would take as much time out of their day, especially on their own time, as she did. "Need help?" I asked, finishing a quick sweep of the floors and tables. I stood right behind her, perhaps even too close, but I was only making sure she didn't fall off her rickety old stool. She lifted herself up on her toes. The heel of one of her black stiletto shoes slipped off, and I saw the beautiful arch of her foot. The urge to reach out and touch the sinfully soft skin was too great. Hell, I even wanted to press my nose against her and find out what her feet smelled like after a full day of work, most of which she'd gone without socks. Just imagining that delicious musk made my mouth water. Such a naughty teacher. She seemed to know exactly what she was doing to me. It was okay, because being around Mrs. Hill 6 hours a day and 5 days a week was enough for me. Peggy eventually got the top corner into the perfect place, and knowing her, she probably didn't even listen to me. When she put on her shoe and walked down the steps, her foot was already out of sight. "Wow, that's beautiful, if I'm not mistaken," Peggy smirked, looking down at her work with her hands on her hips. "And I say, how about you, Jackson?" I wouldn't call her work perfect. Sloppily drawn, incorrect Spanish words and grammar, glued on clippings of Mexican kids sliding down, and needless to say, she wasn't even good at everything. But that was one of the many things I loved about Mrs. Hill. Even if she was bad at something, like crafts or even all Spanish, if she was passionate about something, her confidence gave her strength rather than talent or skill. It was impressive and, oddly enough, inspiring. Not that the abnormality of this world ever turned me away from what I wanted. Hell, I wanted it myself. "I like it," I replied. "It'll be just right for our week of traditional Spanish fiestas. No matter what, I always encouraged Peggy. This woman had many faces, but it was quite obvious how I was going to gain her favor, her ego. That was all it took. So throughout the time we spent together, I endeavored to strengthen her. I knew it would get her hot and in a more flirtatious mood, but I wasn't sure it would be enough for more. But I was going to find out. We finished, making small talk to fill the time. I could feel the tension between us building faster than usual, and I wondered if Peggy had noticed it too. "Mrs. Hill, I was wondering if you'd like to help me with something. I'm studying massage therapy for a summer job, and I could really use someone to practice on," I said, as I watched the frail woman heft her large bag full of test papers and lesson plans onto her shoulder. She hummed softly, seeming to contemplate it. "Well, I don't see why not," she finally replied. "What techniques are you studying?" I sighed, feeling like I was having trouble speaking for a moment. This could piss her off and change our entire relationship. Or this was my one chance to finally do all the things I had fantasized about. "I've been focusing on feet and ankles for now," I replied, pulling out my keys as we walked out of the classroom, and Mrs. Hill closed the door. Well, I don't know if I should be practicing this." The way she waved it off while still blushing and trying to hide her feet made my heart pound. The view of her from behind was breathtaking. I wished she could see herself through my eyes. "What do you mean?" "That's exactly what I need to practice on," I told her, reaching out and gently running my hand over the back of her hand. "My hands are so big, I need to learn the basics on someone with legs suitable for them. Besides, small feet are boring. I can do this in no time. I need a challenge, Peggy." There was a spark in her eyes when she finally met my gaze. There was still uncertainty in them, but I could tell she was interested. We said nothing else to each other at that moment, except for her gentle instruction to follow her to my car. We parked side by side, and Peggy stopped me again between our cars. "You can't park in my driveway. Just find some place and walk. Make sure no one sees you," she whispered to me, looking around nervously. It was really nice that she caught on to what was really going on. I guess this was a first for her. I felt honored to be a man who could show an older woman something real. Making sure no one could see me, I crept into the Hill house, slipping silently through the backsliding door into the kitchen. It was dark, but as soon as I entered, I heard short heels tapping on the floor, getting closer. Peggy entered the kitchen and quickly pulled the blinds on the glass door, sighing as she felt safer. "I'm sorry. I know there's no shame in it, but Hank won't understand," she explained, gesturing for me to follow her into the back of the house. The house was dark until she led me into a small den, turning on a dim overhead light. I looked around, appreciating how old-fashioned the room was. "I brought lotions." Peggy brought me back to reality as she approached me with several different bottles. They all had very simple scents: floral, vanilla, the kind of thing that such a simple Mrs. Hill was supposed to use. "Thanks, Peggy. Sit on the couch," I told her, picking out a half-used vanilla-scented lotion. When she sat down in the middle of the visibly aged couch, I sat on the floor across from her. To prepare myself, I rolled up my sleeves and rubbed my palms to warm them, then gently took hold of her right ankle. I sensed her reluctance as she tensed up, but I continued, gently rubbing the small circles on her ankle with my thumb. Taking off her shoes was like opening an extravagant gift I'd been waiting for all my life. I wanted this mature woman to see what her beautiful legs were doing to me, but I wasn't prepared for the fact that they would turn out to be really amazing. Her legs were so long and untouched, probably because they were constantly covered. As I lowered my shoe to the ground, my gaze stopped on her soft, smooth soles. Wow, Peggy, your feet really are divine. Just as I thought. I had a hard time letting go of her naked foot to take off the other shoe. You shouldn't hide them, I murmured, moving closer and placing both of her gorgeous size 16s in my lap. Well, that's very nice of you, but they're so huge. Other women have more feminine, graceful feet. The woman's embarrassment was evident as she curled her perfect toes down, squeezing her feet and trying to make them smaller. I grinned, took one of them in my hands, and very slowly and gently ran my palms over it, making sure to run my thumbs down the middle of her warm soles. As I've said before, little feet are boring. Yours are extraordinary, Peggy. I mean it, I assured her, lifting her foot and kissing the very center of the soft, sensitive sole, pressing my nose against the silky skin. The smell was delightful. Her feet must have been sweating all day in those modestly heeled shoes. I felt her tense up and left another kiss on her heel before placing her foot back in my lap to apply lotion to her hands. You have the feet of royalty, did you know that? Egyptian royalty to be exact, I explained, realizing my words were based on truth but largely fabricated to make her feel better. The shape and size tells me that. Really? I mean, I've always been told I look strikingly like Cleopatra, Peggy said quietly, her cheeks flushed, embarrassment finally turning to flattery. This time when I held out my hand, the woman actually placed her foot in my palm. I began to massage her foot, not because I was in some kind of class, that was a lie, but because I knew what I had to do to make a woman melt at the mere touch of her feet. I started just taking my time applying lotion to her leg, trying to touch every inch of it. Yeah, I can see the commonalities. I have to admit, I've noticed from the first day I met you that you have extraordinary feet, I explained, turning my attention back to her soles, enjoying how nice and soft they were. The lotion would only make them even softer. As I groped both of her feet, taking my time and enjoying it, Peggy giggled now and then, even tried to pull away, but I wouldn't let her. Your feet are so sensitive. It's a shame your husband doesn't do this for you, I said, pressing my thumbs against her skin and following her perfect arch. It was his omission, though, and I didn't feel guilty about cutting in and taking over. Peggy laughed softly, shaking her head. Oh no, that's not one of Hank's skills. But he has a lot of them, maybe not as many as I do, but still quite a few, she explained, apparently trying to make him seem better. But I didn't care about the man. All I cared about was showing Peggy something she'd never felt before. I see. So, how does it feel? I asked, placing the heels of her feet back on my lap. By this point, a noticeable gash had formed on my pants, and I noticed Mrs. Hill trying not to stare. That was really nice. I think you're ready for class, she replied quickly, removing her legs from my lap, but I grabbed her ankles, not letting her take them from me. Oh, we're not done yet, Peggy. I want to try another method. She raised her eyebrows, but the woman let me bring her legs back into my lap. I let them go so I could start unbuckling my belt. I'm going to show you something that will be very pleasurable. For both of us, I smirked slightly, with the confidence of a young man fresh out of college. From the way she was gawking, it wasn't hard to realize that Peggy had never experienced anything like this before. Between her legs, my buddy was more than half hidden. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and I squealed with happiness at being surrounded by those luscious, haggard feet. How does it feel? I asked, not taking my eyes off the way her feet closed around me, heels and toes meeting easily. I mean, he's very warm and impressive, she replied, visibly stunned and excited in a shaky voice. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my gaze on her. Impressive? Isn't Hank that big? I asked, running my palms over the tops of her legs and squeezing them harder. Do you think you could do that with him? As soon as my question was spoken, I started using her legs for a slow rub, moving them around to show her the pace. I bet he'll disappear between the vaults. She didn't answer, but she didn't stop me either. That feels fucking amazing, Peggy, I murmured, my eyes darkening as I finally looked up at her. I've never seen legs so seductive, so voluptuous. Your husband doesn't even realize what he has. But I do, and I will pamper them. I began to use her legs faster, our eyes still locked as the movements moved her skirt up. This is what you can do for me, I told her, my tone getting a little deeper. Keep doing it like this. Keep your legs tight against it." Finally, I let her go, and Peggy handled the controls flawlessly. Her speed was impressively steady for someone who had never done this before. Her pace only slowed in places, but that didn't bother me. Nothing could have mattered as much with her soft legs wrapped around me. "Damn it, Mrs. Hill, you're a damn natural," I moaned, throwing my head back. I was already close to it, and she hadn't even gotten in yet. The combination of her slender, soft, lotion-slippery soles with weeks of desirable teasing made my body tingle and my mind delightfully foggy. Well, it's not too difficult, and I've always been famous for my precision and speed. Flattery proved to be the way to get into Peggy's pleasantly large, hot and sweaty boots. She wasn't the most complicated person, but damn, she was perfect for me. I couldn't stand her caressing me for long. And that was the end of this wonderful scene. From the look on Peggy's face, this was something very new, but from the way she was smiling, I could tell she was enjoying it. Without saying a word, I started rubbing all over her legs, a little faster, but almost the same way I had done with the lotion. When my fingers slid between her perfectly shaped toes, I finally stood up. "God, I'd forgotten how much energy in young people," Peggy said, her gaze fixed on my eyes. "Energy, Mrs. Hill, that's not the point at all. I have to give you something crushing after what you just did to me," I said, as I gently nudged her to settle down on the worn couch. Her hair, styled in a beehive, pressed against the back of the couch. As much as I wanted to make it beautiful and romantic, I couldn't do it, losing all patience. I pulled up her long skirt and she fell completely under my control. I didn't get a good look at her there. It was a shame. Oh, I knew he seemed big before, but I've never been with such a massive man. Although, I've only been with Hank and one other friend. When I was much younger, her voice shook. She was perfect. I playfully wondered if she ever got turned on like that with her boring husband. "I don't think I'm that big," I shrugged. "Maybe they're just smaller than usual," I told her, and a playful smirk appeared on my face. Without giving her time to respond, I started. It wasn't too intense at first, just slow, rhythmic movements, but gradually I picked up speed, and soon the room was filled with uncontrollable sounds from Peggy. It was a really pleasant surprise when she started to pick up on the pattern of my beastly blows. It was intoxicating. "Hoda! That's it! Come on, cowboy! You ain't gonna hurt this old lady!" She was getting more and more confident by the minute, and I liked it a hell of a lot. Give me a chance to see what this old lady could do. Her body was adjusting to me, as were her movements. I could tell this woman was willing to do anything for me, watching her world open up because of me and my determination to make her feel amazing. Peggy needed to become as dependent on me as I was on her, and I had a plan to make that happen. Once I started to get close to the end, she melted after that, and I knew it wouldn't last long. With another long scream from her pretty mouth, Peggy was finishing while I was getting a blissful high. When I finally reached my peak, I tried to do it quietly. "Jackson, I can feel it." Gasping, we slowly settled down and looked at each other for a long time. "I don't know, but it's something I can make you feel. Now that you're going to be carrying my baby, I think we should talk. Maybe tomorrow at breakfast, Mrs. Hill?" Here comes this short story to its logical conclusion. In general, speaking about the very essence of the story, it is fetishism. Many people are trying to understand the nature of fetishes, including foot fetish. For some, it is just a hobby, and for others, a real attraction associated with sexual excitement. Fetishism, in either case, represents a particular aspect of sexuality that can be difficult to explain or even understand for those who do not share this interest. However, it is important to remember that sexual preferences are highly individualized, and each person is entitled to their own unique tastes. Like our characters in this story. Thank you for watching, dear viewer. Don't forget that we have a Patreon where stories with more detailed descriptions, and most importantly, uncensored text format, are released. And by the way, this story is already there.